This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review Extra, the spin-off show that takes a look at one individual ident each episode and gives it the review it deserves. And this time around, we're embarking on a journey through the ITV Network and all the different regional stations that comprised it. Though this time, we've got another double whammy, as we look at ABC and Associated Rediffusion. Let's kick things off with ABC. This company ran a chain of cinemas back in the day, and had been persuaded by the Independent Television Authority to fill a broadcasting gap in their then brand new ITV network. Thus ABC would broadcast a weekend service to both the Midlands and the North of England, starting up in February and May of 1956 respectively. Given that ABC originated in the realm of cinema, let's take a look at their idents to see if their branding would reflect or move away from that lineage. Another familiar look for the early days of ITV. The first ident we see actually does lean quite heavily on the branding used by ABC in the cinemas, the only main addition being the extra bar that reads television. Perhaps the adaptation of their existing branding was meant to help connect the familiarity audiences might have had with the chain, although this wouldn't last long on TV screens, as a new sequence was to be designed to come across as more independent and detached from the cinema world. I'm glad that they did this, as the original ABC TV logo does feel a little lackluster, even by late 1950s standards. The second ident is arguably the most iconic ABC logo. 3 arrows shoot down, revealing the 3 letters that make up the company name. The triangles that remain then converge to form the new ABC symbol, which would create a much stronger lasting impact with audiences than its predecessor. Fun fact too, the 3 notes you hear in the soundtrack are actually the notes A, B, C that you'd find on a piano. A neat little addition, but one that would soundtrack the company's idents for the vast majority of the time. I think this is a massive step up for ABC in terms of its ident presentation. The 60s have finally arrived, and the inclusion of some animation, albeit limited, helped make this simple concept really come alive on black and white telescreens. This ident would last throughout the decade, the only major change being the typeface, which by the mid-60s adopted a more bold and striking look. This memorable sequence wouldn't last to see the 1970s, however, as ABC lost out in the 1968 franchise round, and ceased broadcasting in the July of 1968. What became of ABC TV is an interesting story, but more on that a little bit later. For now, let's move on to our second franchise holder today, Associated Rediffusion. The very first ITV franchise to launch in the September of 1955, Associated Rediffusion operated a weekday service in London and the surrounding areas. Given that this was the very first ITV station to hit the airwaves, Associated Rediffusion often doesn't get as much comment as some of its regional peers. Let's see if we can find out why, by taking a look at how this trailblazer decided to brand itself on viewers' screens. Quite underwhelming for the first ITV station. The initial ident, that lasted for almost a decade mind you, is just some simple, unexciting text accompanied with an adastral star, sometimes reporting to have even been spinning. The music is a little interesting, actually using Morse code sounds as the basis for the tune, which you can actually hear if you listen in. But honestly, even by the early days of TV, this is pretty uninspired stuff. When a brand new change came in 1964, it's honestly very much welcomed. The company name was shortened to simply Rediffusion London, and their idents changed too. The adastral star remained, spinning on a more regular basis. The name of the company, like ABC, adopts a much bolder and more striking typeface, and the music has been enhanced to sound even more bombastic. It's certainly an improvement from what we see in 1955, but still, this feels very lackluster compared to a lot of other ITV franchises and how they handled their sequences. We do get a rare example of a Christmas ident from the 60s, however. The Rediffusion name adopts a more ye old style typeface, with the fanfare adapting a bit of Deck the Halls for your viewing pleasure. The background has similarly been adapted to be a bit more animated for the seasonal time of year. However, like ABC, Rediffusion also fell foul of the 1968 franchise round and would cease broadcasting in the July of 1968. With ABC TV set to fold, the ITA proposed a merger between it and Rediffusion to form a new company that would operate the London weekday service. Despite some initial resistance internally regarding certain aspects of the merger, the deal was agreed, and on the 30th of July, 1968, viewers in London would cease to see ABC or Rediffusion on their screens, but instead be greeted by Thames Television. But more on that next time. ABC and Rediffusion were some of the pioneers of their day in terms of their contribution to the ITV network. Being amongst some of the first few companies to operate within it, they certainly managed to carve out their own places amongst the landscape, and programmes that connected with audiences. Despite only broadcasting for little over a decade, both companies are still remembered to some degree. ABC, with their iconic logo, accompanies many classic programmes of the day, and Rediffusion experienced a sort of mini-revival, when the rights to the name were bought up in the 90s and used on a couple of programmes. No matter which way you look at it, despite not lasting as long as some arguably more recognisable names, you cannot dispute the importance and impact that these early companies had on shaping and building up the ITV network. And so that brings us to the end of another episode of the Ident Review Extra. If you enjoyed this look back at ABC and Associated Rediffusion, then please leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel for lots more Ident related content. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. A special thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special shout out to Macra, an AMTV staff member. Until the next broadcast, we wish you all a good night.